governmental overspending, corporate greed, and a dysfunctional economy. Remember when the Fed said inflation was transitory? Remember when the government and Wall Street and news outlets said that 2022 was going to be the year? And then when 2022 wasn't the year, 2023 was definitely going to be the year. Well, we're now sitting a third of the way into 2024, and interest rates remain at the highest level they've been in over 2 decades. And they've been there for months. Now, to give credit where credit is due, inflation has come down, allegedly. Although it might not feel that way to you or I when we go buy necessities that were literally cheaper just a week ago. Regardless, even putting that aside, inflation is still nowhere near the Federal Reserve's target rate of 2%. And that means we're not done yet. And that's because to the Federal Reserve, the economy is actually quite strong. Now, to you or I, when we go to the grocery store and we get fucked by the prices of basic goods, or when we fill up at the gas station for double what we're used to, or when we go to work and we get paid a fraction of what we probably should get paid, especially when we take into account corporate profits, it probably doesn't feel that way. But to the Federal Reserve and to Jerome Powell, the economy is strong. And that's because unemployment is still extremely low, sitting at a record low of 3.8%. And spending is too high. And guess what those things mean? They mean that Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve want to see more unemployment. They want to see more of you and I fired. And they want to see more slowdown in the economy. Why? Well, because as powerful as the Federal Reserve is, that's still basically the only tool that they've come up with in regards to controlling inflation. As of now, there's no better way. And until that happens, until unemployment goes up and spending comes down, rates are going to remain high. So, what the fuck is going on? And when will we see relief in the interest rate environment? Well, let's talk about it. Here's the problem with all of this. Even if the Federal Reserve started cutting rates right this second, our economy would not see relief for months, perhaps even more than a year. And the reason for this is twofold. One, policy changes take time to affect the market. There's a lag between rate changes and visual changes to operations in the companies that actually make up the economy. And second, probably more importantly, is that even if the Fed cuts rates right now, they're going to cut rates very slowly, probably 1/4 to 2/4 points at a time at most. Which means to get from above 5%, which is where the federal funds rate is right now, to something reasonable, say 3%, will take multiple Federal Reserve meetings. Meetings that are, at the minimum, a month apart. And that's assuming that inflation doesn't spike as rates are cut. And that's also assuming that there are not rate pauses on the way down. And that brings me to 2025. At this point in the game, it is all but certain that at the very minimum, the first half of 2025 will be very similar to what we're experiencing right now. High interest rates, high mortgage rates, high car notes, and job cuts. And that's if they cut interest rates right now. The next Fed meeting is like tomorrow, which means they technically could start cutting interest rates right now. But they won't. The CME Watch tool, which tracks the likelihood of Fed funds rate cuts, currently has the odds of an interest rate cut at the next meeting at like 2.7%. And those odds have only gone down from a month ago, which basically eliminates this month as a reasonable starting point for rate cuts. Okay? What about next meeting? That meeting is in June, a little over a month away. And the odds of a rate cut at that meeting used to be over 55%. Well, the CME Watch tool currently has those odds at 11%. And if the pattern continues, those odds will probably also drop into the single digits, just like they did for this next meeting. So what am I saying with all of this? I'm saying that inflation is not and was not transitory. I'm saying that inflation is proving sticky, just like I said it would for months. Not to pat myself on the back here, but I have been calling for sticky inflation in the 3% range for months. You can see this in any of my previous videos on this subject. I guess what I'm saying is that nobody has a fucking clue when rates will be lowered. But so far, everyone from the Federal Reserve to Wall Street has been overly optimistic. So knowing that, we the people who actually have to buy things to live, we need to tighten our belts and we need to save as much money as we can, which I understand has become virtually impossible for most. And we need to curb our expectations because right now, 2025 isn't looking any better.